Another Sunday means another Hog Hoops report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. And Kevin, a whole lot to talk about for the Razorbacks because finally we are at the beginning, well, in a week or so, the beginning of the SEC slate coming up on Saturday. Arkansas takes on number one Tennessee on the road. That's a heck of a way to kick off the conference slate. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Arkansas first takes on Oakland tomorrow in a rare kind of Monday game. And obviously storylines galore there. John Calipari gets his, I know revenge is a bit dramatic way to put it, but revenge opportunity against Oakland after they knocked Kentucky out of the postseason a year ago. Storylines there, but really it's more about one final tune-up for Arkansas before just a crazy SEC slate with a ranked opponent after ranked opponent after ranked opponent comes Arkansas's way.
Yeah, it's a schedule, 18 games. There's not a single, in terms of quad, there's not a single bad loss opportunity. It's all quad one or quad two. That's what makes the Oakland game, you talk about storylines, it's the last chance for Arkansas to suffer a bad loss when you look at quad. And because Arkansas's net ranking is 14th out of 16 SEC teams, still in the mid-40s, 45 coming into today, they've only got one quality win in non-conference. That was Michigan. 1-2 in quad one games. No quad two results. And yeah, they're undefeated in quad three, quad four. It's a bit of a saving grace right now as a team that's still, projected by Lenardi this week as a 9 seed, not far from the bubble again, is the fact you don't have any bad losses. So Oakland would represent a quad four loss. Arkansas needs to take care of business on Monday so that it goes into that brutal SEC not playing from behind in terms of that resume, that postseason resume. It's a big deal because of that, to me, first and foremost. But you mentioned John Calipari in that first round exit last year in the NCAA tournament against Oakland. Let's throw in DJ Wagner, Duke Theorem, Big Z. Revenge, is that dramatic? I don't know, but there's got to be at least a But I don't know that revenge is dramatic. That's what I was going to say. I'm closer to revenge than I am motivation.
Okay.
In terms of what might be on the top of some of these guys' minds going into that. And you've got to find ways. I mean, what made Michael Jordan the GOAT was he took even small things and made them revenge mechanisms. Like it's not something I just kind of brushed off my shoulder. It pissed me off. I think there's something to be said for that. Even if you're the high major playing at home against a team that's lost 5 of its last 6 games, you want to send a message. And I think Arkansas, if you look at the last 2 against unranked mid-majors, it's been a better first and second half collectively than you're seeing 25-plus point wins against UCA and North Carolina A&T. I think Oakland's a little bit better in terms of its personnel than both of those teams are, but not good enough. A team with 4 players averaging double figures, a couple in the backcourt, a couple of what I call Kamani Johnson-type bodies, 6'6", 6'7" guys, 239, 247 listed as forwards. They're averaging, somewhere between 11 and 13 points. And they have defensively, they're interesting because their man defense has zone principle. Their zone defense has man principle. And you're not really sure. They don't necessarily align themselves in traditional ways for gap help and other things. So that can be a little bit tricky trying to figure that out and play against it. But it's, again, a team that's lost 5 of 6. If you look at it statistically, averaging mid-60s in scoring, not very good anywhere, defensively or offensively, when you look at it statistically. Big advantage Arkansas, and I think the revenge factor for some guys maybe helps lock in focus where otherwise it might be a trap game because of that next game against Tennessee to open up SEC play on the road and coming back from the holidays and maybe being a little rusty or not completely focused. I think there are several reasons. Avoiding that bad loss on the resume and getting some revenge. And then you play them all to win, right? There's that factor. So edge to Arkansas on Monday after a 9-day layoff.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, there was the 2 things for me was that 9-day layoff. That always scares you, right? You go home for the holidays or whatever it might be. You come out slow and all of a sudden you're in a game that you find a little bit too close and everybody in the arena starts to get a little nervous. So that scares you. And Oakland does not profile, you hit it impressively, statistically, in really any capacity. The one thing you could say is they're not going to be scared of Arkansas just from the standpoint that they've played Kansas, they've played Illinois, they've played Michigan State. So that would, if you're looking for a, what's Oakland's path, it would be that they've seen teams with Arkansas's talent profile so far. It's not going to be and obviously they took down Kentucky a year ago. It's not like they're going to be afraid of anybody, but especially this season, I think that would be where you would look for that. You make a good point. Arkansas just needs to take care of business. And the first half thing I think is important too. Just to eliminate all doubt like they have in the past couple of games and get yourself in a space to where you can move into Saturday, which is just going to be a mammoth challenge for Arkansas. We'll talk a little bit about that. Number 1 Tennessee, an undefeated Volunteer squad that has earned that number 1 ranking and is just one of many incredibly talented SEC teams. Rick Barnes' squad is talented in every single way. It's going to give Arkansas a lot of trouble, but that's a tough way to start the SEC slate. But hey, we'll see exactly where Arkansas is and how far the Razorbacks have come so far this season on Saturday in Knoxville.
Yeah, I agree. Look, this is a Tennessee program. If you look at back the last 5-6 years under Rick Barnes, top tier SEC, top pecking order, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there, but not necessarily a postseason team. Last year they got to an Elite Eight.
Yeah,
that's as far as they've been under Rick Barnes, and so they've got some new pieces. Chaz Lanier has just been a force in the backcourt. You've got Ziegler. An all SEC lead guard, leads the league in assists just ahead of Boogie Fland, a double-figure scorer, a brilliant floor leader. You've got Gainey in that backcourt that rises up and has big games, especially in big games. Meshack, they've just always it's sort of the same blueprint with Rick Barnes teams. They play really well together, connected on both ends. A hard-cutting team in their offense. So guys that are playing off the ball can put you in jeopardy because of their movement off the ball. And then a guy like Ziegler recognizes how to beat you with the right pass at the right time. It's not always the spectacular play with Tennessee. It's more about precision. And so Arkansas will be a great test on the road. Let's remember last year, again, we talked about Oakland. It's an interesting bookend because Oakland ended Kentucky's season. Kentucky was 0-1 in the SEC tournament, I think losing to A&M. With a double bye. They lost to A&M in the SEC tournament in their only game. But at the end of the regular season, Kentucky went in and knocked off Tennessee on its home court with some of those same Razorback players playing in that game, right? And so that was the Tennessee team that won the league outright. Kentucky finished tied in a 4-way tie, second place, a game out. So it's an interesting dichotomy of how Kentucky's season ended last year, end of regular season, then the end of their actual season will play tournament, and these next 2 opponents. There are a lot of storylines. I think the biggest storyline, though, again, we said avoiding that bad loss. It's not whether you win or lose at Tennessee. If you win that one, it's a great omen. You want to see how well Arkansas competes in it for sure, and then how they handle a loss if it's a loss, because they come home for back-to-back against 2 teams that are ranked and they're really, really good, including a Florida team that's going to be
undefeated,
13-0 now and going into SEC play. And of course, Ole Miss just before that. So it is a brutal, you could pick out any part of the schedule. I remember before the season started, we knew it was going to be a good SEC. We thought maybe 9 teams were going to be NCAA tournament worthy. Well, that's a lot. Right now, 13 projected in, 2 on the bubble, 15 or 16 teams projected in. And oh, by the way, South Carolina, with 3 losses, the most in the league, just knocked off the ranked Clemson team. In Arkansas, that's a road game in March. There's nothing easy here. There's no place you point and go, oh, Arkansas, if they suffer a loss here or there, they can run up 2 or 3 wins in a row. You can't predict that right now. And I think the other thing is, when we look at Tennessee, is who's available for Arkansas even at that point. I think I'm getting a sense that maybe some of these guys being held out in recent games is more load management than it really is. Guys just aren't able to play, maybe getting a little rest, maybe letting heal up just a little bit more if they've got nicks and bruises. But Arkansas is going to need all hands on deck, Jacob. I don't see another pathway for success in this league with Arkansas being spotty with available players like they were in non-conference, figuring out ways for a while to knock off quad 4 teams, before finally getting around to being good in both halves. I think a lot of that's been getting Jonas Seydoux back and Brazil's increased level of play as well.
Yeah, you mentioned there's no stretch, right, for Arkansas in this SEC slate. And that's what's so funny when it's, you talk about, man, what a mammoth game to open up against a Tennessee team that's number one and undefeated. But you said it, you come back home to Ole Miss and Florida are just as challenging. And, if there's one stretch that I think you would have to pick out, it would be the LSU. I think it's LSU, Missouri, and Georgia right after the Ole Miss and Florida game. And that's, again, just a testament to the SEC that you talk about, a Missouri team that was struggled so much last year. But, you go to Columbia, and that's the same building that they knocked off Kansas earlier this year, right? So it's just there's no place for Arkansas. You're going to have to come ready to play every single night. But, another storyline, obviously, we didn't even mention it, Jonas Adu, right, going up against Tennessee. So that's going to be him going up against his former team. But, you mentioned both Ziegler and Lanier, and I think that's where it kind of starts and finishes with Tennessee, just from the standpoint that Lanier is averaging 17, 18 points a game, and he's shooting 47% from three. I mean, he is having a flat-out unbelievable All-American level season. And I think the matchup that I'm really excited for is, Ziegler I'm not supposed to like Tennessee players, but Kevin, I'll let you in on a secret. He's close to my heart because he is a true old-fashioned point guard, and that, he averages over 8 assists a game, and he gets after you on the defensive side of the ball. And we've seen Arkansas's guards really pick it up lately. Ziegler's going to punish them, and he's going to challenge them in ways that maybe we haven't seen them push so far this season in terms of turnovers, picking them up full court, and all that brings in terms of the Tennessee backcourt.
Well, Arkansas has a proclivity of self-inflicted wounds. And you combine that with a true road game against number one, against the caliber of backcourt. You talked about Chaz Lanier's numbers. Those were kind of the numbers we envisioned for a Nelly Davis. We haven't even talked about him, who missed the last game, resting the wrist, whatever that looks like in terms of getting him back. I'm expecting him back for Oakland, an all hands on deck game. You got to have, to me, you can't really afford right now to sit anybody else out unless they're truly injured, because you need a launching pad from, here's what our rotation looks like. Here's everybody before you take that first game on the road against Tennessee. It may be something different than what I just said. That would be my take on it. But Lanier, you look at his numbers, that's kind of what we envisioned for Nelly Davis. That hasn't happened. That's another concern, because Boogie Fland is clearly Arkansas's go-to player. And when we talk about, a guy like Adu Thero putting up big numbers and Arkansas's leading scorer, I still think it's Boogie Fland in terms of he can create a shot anywhere. He can facilitate off his creation. And he's the guy in these close games. Arkansas hasn't had close games since Michigan a few weeks ago, and they've had so many days off between games. It seems like forever ago. But the SEC's, for Arkansas, best case is probably a bunch of close games. Yeah. And then are you going to be self-inflicted wound in the last 3 minutes of games? It's a 1-2 possession game. Is Boogie Fland the only guy that you can run offense through? I envision that being partly Nelly Davis, and a guy that can create shots or make the right play, because teams are sending help fearful of what he's going to do in his shot creation, and he gets off the ball for someone to get an easy score. He's not been that guy. He's been an off-the-ball complementary player, a more catch-and-shoot, spot-up guy, taking good shots, low volume, efficiency's great, but 10 points per game, that's not what we envisioned. So I don't mean to go negative here, but I'm saying as we start to wind this down and get into this SEC in about a week, there's still a lot of question marks on this Arkansas team. Attrition, availability, injuries, that stuff. And then the pieces, although the front line looks immensely better with Adu and Brazil playing at those levels. In the backcourt with Fland, and we didn't mention DJ Wagner really putting up solid performances, especially in big games. Look at what he did at Miami. Look what he did against Michigan, especially in the second half and those runs Arkansas needed. Outside of that, I still think Nelly Davis limits where I see the potential as this a final weekend of the NCAA tournament team. It's a long way to go for a projected 9 seed right now. The pieces are mostly there. How does Nelly Davis fit in? Because that could be the difference between how good this Arkansas team could be. Perhaps maybe it's good enough with what they have now, the way that Davis factors in, to be beyond a first weekend of the tournament. But can they get to that final weekend? I haven't seen enough in this mix, even though it's starting to look a lot better and a lot more balanced, to suggest that they can get there. And I think there's at least 3 or 4 SEC teams so far, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, Florida, that you could look at now and say, man, that kind of looks like a Final Four makeup. So Arkansas's got work to do. And you mentioned that those pockets of games. It's not just Arkansas. Even the top teams that I just ran through, they're not going to have any easy nights either. They may win. Some teams are going to win by big margins. It'll play out that way. But going into it, nobody can feel comfortable.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned Arkansas finding offense outside of Boogie Fland, creating or whatever it might be. And you talked about Nelly Davis. Man, Saturday would be a good game for him to kind of take that next step forward because, not to just go back to Ziegler again, but I could be wrong, but I'd assume you're going to see a lot of Zakai Ziegler shadowing Boogie Fland wherever he goes. And, Fland came here to be challenged by the best, but it's going to be challenging for him to go up against a guard like that. You'd like to see Nelly Davis step up. But I keep thinking of other storylines too, and not to keep going negative, but it's also Arkansas with the exception of the Miami game. We haven't seen how this team's going to respond to road environments either, right? So that's another thing to watch where we're in January. And yes, they went to Miami, but that's a team that, hasn't had all its pieces, obviously just lost its coach as well. And now you talk about going to Tennessee, where I believe it's the third largest basketball arena in the entire country. I think it's just North Carolina and Syracuse that seats more. That place is going to be rocking. That's something we have to watch as well to see how Arkansas responds to that. There's a lot to be excited about in terms to see where this Arkansas team is, but you mentioned it just since Michigan. Obviously, this team has improved, but we're really going to learn a lot come Saturday in Knoxville. It's just what it is.
And that's the exciting thing about the SEC being so good. And it's Calipari's first year where the offseason recruiting was just fine.
Yeah.
Except that maybe they didn't get enough players outside of a top 9 rotation. And I think the fact that the SEC is even better than we thought makes it more problematic if Arkansas continues to bump along with guys not healthy and not able to go. And again, that's why you hope some of this has been a good part load management where they're just because there's two parts of that. If you're have a nagging injury, holding a guy out or limiting their minutes maybe helps getting them recovered a little faster. The other thing is you only go 9 deep. It maybe helps save some guys' legs because the SEC you're not going to have a lot of big wins where you can sit guys down early and put your walk-ons in.
Yeah.
So there's some positives there in terms of how maybe that's played out. But it's not just how good the SEC is relative to the SEC historically. We know it's gotten better and better and been one of the better basketball conferences in recent years. But you look at the dynasty conference runs over the decades with Big East, ACC, Big 12, Big 10. I don't know that we've ever seen a season where this many teams in any conference looks NCAA tournament worthy and where they went between 75 to 78% one loss head to head against the other major conferences, through this part in December where you've really wrapped up non-con and now you're getting into league play. I just don't think there's ever been a league to this point that's looked this good, which makes it more daunting for Calipari. But the good news there is, it's his first year at Arkansas. Dean of SEC coaches, 15 years at Kentucky. He's not afraid. He's not bashful about being in big moments. You look at his resume, that's an obvious statement. Now they just got to go out and prove that the work done in the offseason and the plan is working.
Yeah.
You got to start winning some quality games. And you got one proof of concept there, Michigan in a neutral site.
Yeah. And a big opportunity, perhaps the biggest opportunity to do so on Saturday against number 1 Tennessee. Hey, quickly before we go, I know you want to talk a little bit of recruiting. You just mentioned it. John Calipari, offseason recruiting. Where do the Razorbacks stand with a couple targets and a couple guys narrowing some lists down here to top 3s?
Yeah, class of 2025, Mohamed Silla took a Sunday visit on December 1st to Arkansas. That was the last of 5 official visits, and it was his top 5: Arkansas, Kansas, Washington, Oregon, and Georgia Tech. And he narrowed that down to 3 a few days ago. It's Arkansas, Oregon, and Georgia Tech. Arkansas associate head coach Chen Coleman last week was out in Las Vegas at the Tarkanian Classic to see Bella Vista Prep, where Silla, a 6'10", 240-pound center, was playing in the same game that Coleman was there. Oregon head coach Dana Altman, former Arkansas head coach for less than 24 hours back in the day, was also in attendance. And so we'll see what happens. So my understanding is a decision could be coming soon. We're at midterm, which adds intrigue with classes starting back officially at Arkansas anyway, January 13th. Let's say a decision comes down soon. Is he going to be a reclass and midterm guy where you could then redshirt him and let him practice or use him? That's a speculation on my part, only because of the timing of things and cramming in that Sunday visit. And he's going to likely announce soon. So it's down to those three. And so we'll see what happens fairly soon. But a guy that On Three Sports ranks as the 13th best player in the country, still a 4-star, even as high as number 13, 247 has him ranked 30th, also a 4-star, arguably the top center in the country. And he is a more traditional paint kind of player, but he's very agile at 6'10", great length, quick off the floor, quick foot quickness that I like, which makes him versatile defensively. Yeah, he's going to be traditionally playing around doing most of his work around the basket, but he can get out of his area to block shots, alter shots, get a rebound, get a deflection, and he's an above the rim finisher. So a real pick and roll threat, rim running for lob passes and just using that big frame to, he's not thick, but he's big, and that 240, that's pretty solid. It's still in high school. So this is you understand why Calipari's going after him. Another thing, Nate Ament, class of 2025, 5-star out of Virginia, top 5 rated guy, very versatile, stretch the floor kind of guy. I think he's a 3-4 at the college level, probably a wing at the pro level, similar to a Michael Porter Jr. But Ament, Calipari has prioritized him and has been out to see him multiple times. Well, he's out at the John Wall Invitational over the weekend to see Ament play in person along with his son, an Arkansas staffer, obviously one of the assistant coaches, Brad Calipari. They've been out in Virginia again. Former player John Wall, his invitational, Nate Ament, put up a double-double yesterday. And then Arkansas signing Isaiah Sealy. I was out in Pine Bluff yesterday for the King Cotton Holiday Classic, 6'7" combo guard, top 70 player nationally, 4-star, signed out of Springdale, signed with Arkansas in November, and along with Darius Acuff Jr. and Malik Thomas, the 2 5-star, top 10 rated guards. So the top backcourt in the country, Sealy's part of that. I saw him last night dealing with foul trouble, but led Springdale to the win in the semis of the King Cotton Holiday Classic, a prestigious national, multiple 5-stars in this event. His team knocked off Sheldon Henderson's team out, Bel Air out of Houston, 15th ranked player in the country, 5-star, already signed with Duke. But Sealy, 13 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists in about 18 minutes. He was playing with foul trouble. Springdale wins. They'll play in the title game at King Cotton on Monday. And he's a guy that Arkansas coach, don't sleep on him with all the 5-star talk. I'm not saying it'll happen in year one, but he's a really good player, Jacob.
Yeah, I had a chance to get out to Springdale and actually talk to him, I believe the 18th, before whatever, 2 or so weeks ago. And he talked about that, where he mentioned, just how excited he was to play with Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. And he talked about how, obviously those guys have the accolades they do, but that he feels like he pairs really, really well with those guys. And he's kind of the perfect fit with that backcourt. And a guy that's obviously very talented and a guy the staff believes in. And yeah, he might not be, it's an embarrassment of riches we're at essentially at this point, right? Where somebody might say, oh, well, he's not a 5-star. Okay, well, he's still pretty darn good. And he showed it. It was good to see you were out there to see him against some top level talent. But that's going to do it for this week's Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll be back to talk to you next week after Arkansas takes on number 1 Tennessee on Saturday. We're looking forward to it.